The rain hammered against the windows of the glass office on the 30th floor of Springfield's most imposing commercial building. David Thompson, 42 years old, stared blankly at the computer screen, where the frightening amount of his debts blinked back at him. 3 million reais, the artificial intelligence app that had cost 2 years of development and his entire family fortune, was proving to be a resounding failure. Investors were pressuring for results. Employees whispered about layoffs in the halls, and his wife Emily hardly spoke to him for weeks. The phone rang for the 10th time that morning, but David didn't have the courage to answer. He knew it was just another creditor demanding overdue payments. He ran his hand through his graying hair and sighed deeply. How had a man who once built a technological empire come to this point? The answer lay in the last 2 years of risky bets and impulsive decisions. When he launched Mind AI, he believed he would revolutionize the way people interacted with technology. But the market wasn't ready. The competition was fierce, and the bugs in the system drove away the initial users. Now his company, Montenegro Tech, was on the brink of bankruptcy, and he needed a miracle to save not only the business, but also his marriage and his reputation. That was when he heard a soft knock on the door. "Mr. David, may I come in?" The sweet and familiar voice of Mrs. Grace, the family cook for 15 years, brought a bit of relief to his heavy heart. "Of course, Mrs. Grace. Please, come in." The 60-year-old woman, with her white hair tied up in a simple bun and always immaculate apron, entered carrying a tray with fresh coffee and homemade sugar bread. "I noticed you haven't left the office all morning. I thought you might need something to warm your stomach." David smiled for the first time in days. Mrs. Grace always knew exactly what he needed, even when he didn't know himself. "Thank you, Helena. You always take such good care of us." She placed the tray on the table and, instead of leaving immediately as usual, stayed there watching him with her wise brown eyes. "Mr. David, forgive my intrusion, but you seem to be carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." He laughed bitterly. "That's pretty much it, Helena. I think this time I've gotten myself into a mess I can't get out of." The cook moved closer, and with the confidence that only years of companionship can provide, sat down in the chair in front of his desk. "You know, Mr. David, my grandmother always said that when life closes a door, it's because there's a window waiting to be opened. Sometimes we just need to change our perspective." David picked up the cup of coffee and felt the comforting aroma rise to his nostrils. There was something about Mrs. Grace's presence that always calmed him, even in the most turbulent moments. "Helena, I built all of this from scratch. I started programming in my parents' house, worked 18 hours a day for years, and now it's all falling apart." The cook tilted her head, listening attentively. "And what did you love most in the beginning, when you were just a young dreamer programmer?" The question caught David off guard. He had focused so much on the problems of the last few months that he had completely forgotten the passion that had driven him in the beginning. I loved solving real problems for people, creating something that really made a difference in their lives." Mrs. Grace smiled. "And now? What are you trying to solve?" David paused, thoughtful. "Well, Mind AI was supposed to help people organize their lives better, but it turned out to be too complex, too far from reality. You know, Mr. David, every morning when I prepare breakfast for the family, I don't think about technology or algorithms. I think about how to start your day off in the best way possible. It's something simple, but it makes a difference." Helena's words echoed in David's mind. Simplicity, real connection, real problems. "Helena, you've always cooked with such passion. How did you learn all those recipes?" "My mother taught me, who learned from my grandmother, who learned from her mother." Each recipe carries a story, a memory, a bit of love. But nowadays, people have lost that connection with food, with traditions. David felt a spark ignite in his mind. "Keep going, please." "I see my granddaughter, for example. She lives alone and is always ordering food through an app. She doesn't even know how to fry an egg properly. I would love to teach her the family recipes, but she lives far away, and when she comes here, she's always in a rush." The spark turned into a flame. David began to see possibilities where he had previously only seen problems. Helena, what? If there were a way to connect people like you with all this culinary knowledge, with people like your granddaughter, who want to learn but don't know where to start? The cook looked at him with curiosity. What do you mean, Mr. David? An app, but not just any app. Something that truly connects generations, that preserves family traditions, that teaches people to cook with ingredients they have at home. David stood up from his chair, excited for the first time in months. He began to pace back and forth in the office, gesturing as he spoke. Imagine, Helena, an app where grandmothers like you can record videos teaching their traditional recipes, where people can find recipes based on the ingredients they have in their fridge, where each dish has a story, an emotional connection. Mrs. Grace watched David with a growing smile on her face. It had been months since she had seen him so enthusiastic. That sounds wonderful, Mr. David, but how would it work exactly? David grabbed a paper and began to scribble ideas furiously. Look, a person opens the app and photographs the ingredients they have at home. The system, using artificial intelligence, suggests traditional recipes they can make with those ingredients. But these aren't cold internet recipes. They're real family recipes recorded by real people, with tips and secrets passed down from generation to generation. And people could share their own family recipes? Exactly. Each user could create a digital cookbook of their family. Imagine the sentimental value of that, Helena, preserving Grandma's recipes forever, with her voice, with her tricks. Mrs. Grace became emotional. My mother passed away 10 years ago, and I would give anything to have a recording of her teaching me to make the famous cornmeal cake she prepared for the June festivals. It would be perfect. And look, Helena, not just about recipes. It could include stories about the meals, about the special occasions when each dish was served. A true preservation of Brazilian culinary culture. David stopped pacing and looked directly at her. Helena, would you agree to be my first partner in this project? I want you to help me develop this idea. Your culinary knowledge would be fundamental. The cook was surprised. Mr. David, I don't understand anything about technology, but you understand food, tradition, human connection. That's exactly what was missing in my previous projects. I knew technology, but I didn't know what truly mattered to people. At that moment, the office door swung open abruptly. Emily Carter entered with a serious expression, dressed in an elegant navy blue suit and carrying a document folder. David, we need to talk now. Mrs. Grace discreetly stood up. Excuse me, I'll leave you two alone. No, Helena, stay, please. Emily, I was having a brilliant idea to solve our financial problems. Emily sighed and placed the folder on the table. David, I spoke with our accountant this morning. The situation is even worse than we imagined. If we don't find a solution in 30 days, we're going to lose the house, the office, everything. Emily, just listen to this idea. David, Emily interrupted, raising her voice. Enough with ideas, enough with crazy projects. You've already spent our entire reserve on an app that no one wanted to use. I can't live like this anymore. A heavy silence filled the office. Mrs. Grace, feeling awkward, began to head for the door, but David stopped her with a gesture. Emily, I know I made mistakes, but this time it's different. This idea has substance, it has a real market, it has purpose. What idea, David? Another app that no one will want? A family cooking app, something that connects generations, that preserves traditions. Helena was helping me develop it. Emily looked at the cook with an expression of disbelief. Helena? David, with all due respect to Helena, she doesn't understand the tech market. Mrs. Grace, feeling uncomfortable with the tension in the room, tried once again to excuse herself. Maybe it's better if I go back to the kitchen. No, Helena, David insisted. Emily, you're seeing this all wrong. Helena has exactly the knowledge I need. How many times have you complained that you can't cook like your mother, that you've lost the family recipes? Emily paused, the comment hitting her squarely. It was true. Ever since she married David, she had completely depended on Helena for meals, and she always felt guilty for not being able to reproduce the dishes her mother prepared with such care. This is different, David. No, it's not different. It's exactly the problem this app would solve. Imagine being able to access your mother's recipes recorded by her, with all her secrets and tips. Emily looked at Helena, who remained silent, observing the discussion. "Helena, what do you think of this idea?" The cook took a deep breath before responding. "Mrs. Emily, I think it would be wonderful. I see so many young people who can't cook, who have lost the connection with real food. If we could help bring that back—" "But David," Emily interrupted, "even if the idea is good, we don't have any more money to invest in development, not even to pay the employees next month." David felt the enthusiasm dim slightly, but he didn't give up. "Emily, what if we did it differently this time? What if we started small, tested the idea first, without big investments?" "How?" "We can create a simple prototype. Helena can record some basic recipes. I can develop an initial version of the app using resources we already have. If it works, then we look for investors." Emily shook her head. "David, you're being naive. The app market is saturated. How will you compete with giants that are already established?" "Because they don't have what we would have: authenticity. Real recipes, from real families, with real stories. They aren't just ingredients and preparation methods. They're culture, they're emotion." Mrs. Grace, seeing that the couple needed a moment to talk, finally managed to excuse herself. "I'm going to prepare lunch. If you need me, I'll be in the kitchen." After Helena left, Emily approached David. "Rafa, I love your passion, your determination, but I'm scared of losing everything we've built together." David took his wife's hands. "Emily, I'm scared too, but I can't give up. Not now, when I've finally found something that can make a difference in people's lives. And if it doesn't work, what if it's another failure? Then at least we'll know we tried something real, something with purpose, better than giving up without trying." Emily looked deeply into her husband's eyes and saw the same determination that had made her fall in love with him 15 years ago. "What do you need from me?" David smiled, feeling a spark of hope. "Your experience in marketing. You've always been better than me at understanding what really moves people." 3 days passed since the conversation in the office, and David couldn't get the idea out of his head. For the first time in months, he woke up early with energy and purpose. He found Helena in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the family, as she had done every morning for 15 years. "Good morning, Helena. I thought more about our conversation. Would you be willing to record some recipes today?" The cook smiled as she flipped the slices of French bread in the skillet. "Of course, Mr. David. What kind of recipes would you like me to prepare?" "Think of something simple that anyone could make, but that has a story. Something your family has always made." Helena paused what she was doing and looked out the window, as if navigating through decades of memories. "There's my grandmother's recipe for dried meat escondidinho. It was my grandfather's favorite dish, and he used to say it was the best in all of the hillside." "Perfect. And what ingredients does it use?" "Dried meat, cassava, onion, garlic, green herbs, cheese, simple ingredients that most people have access to." David took out his phone and started taking notes. "Helena, while you prepare the coffee, I'll get a camera. How about we record you making this recipe right after lunch?" "Mr. David, I've never appeared on video. What if I say something wrong?" "Helena, you've known this recipe for 40 years. There's no wrong when it comes to family tradition. Speak as you would to your granddaughter." Emily came down for breakfast and found the two talking animatedly. "Good morning. What are you two so excited about?" "Emily, Helena is going to help us record the first recipe for the app, her grandmother's escondidinho." Emily poured herself some coffee and watched her husband. There was something different about him in the last few days, an energy she hadn't seen in a long time. "David, have you researched whether there's really a market for this type of app? Not formally, but just think, how many people do you know who would like to cook more but don't know where to start? How many have ingredients at home but have no idea what to prepare?" "Several," Emily admitted. "I'm one of them." "Exactly. And it's not just about having recipes available. It's about having recipes that tell stories, that connect people." At that moment, David's phone rang. It was Michael Anderson, his partner at Montenegro Tech and the chief developer of Mind AI. "David, we need to talk urgently. Can I come over to your house today?" "Sure, Michael. Did something happen?" "I prefer to talk in person. It's about the future of the company." David hung up the phone with a worried expression. It was Michael. He said he needs to talk urgently about the future of the company. Emily felt a knot in her stomach. Is it about bankruptcy? I don't know, but whatever it is, we'll face it together. 2 hours later, Michael arrived at the Montenegro house. He was a 35-year-old man, thin, always wearing rock band t-shirts and a perpetually serious expression. David, Emily, and Helena welcomed him in the living room. Michael, have a seat. Would you like some coffee? Thank you, Helena. David, I have bad news about Mind AI. David braced himself for the worst. Go ahead. The last investors pulled out. They said the return on investment is far below expectations and that they won't be providing any more funds. Silence filled the room. It was the final blow David had feared. Does this mean that... It means we have resources to keep the company running for another 2 weeks at most. Emily squeezed David's hand, giving him silent support. Michael, is there any possibility of selling Mind AI to another company? I tried, David, but with the reputation the app has in the market, no one is interested in buying it. David took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. This was the moment of truth. Michael, what if I told you I have a new idea? Something completely different. Michael raised his eyebrows. David, with all due respect, but we don't have time or resources to start another project from scratch. What if it was something simple? Something we could develop quickly with the structure we already have? What kind of project? David looked at Helena, who encouraged him with a discreet nod. A family recipe app, but not just recipes. Stories, traditions, emotional connections. Michael made a skeptical expression. David, the culinary app market is saturated. We have Tasty, Cookpad, Tutto Gustoso, but none of them focus on preserving family traditions. None connect generations in the way I'm proposing. Explain further. David stood up and started gesturing, as he always did when he was excited about an idea. Imagine an app where each recipe comes with the story of the family that created it, where you can photograph the ingredients you have at home and receive suggestions for traditional dishes you can make, where grandmothers can record videos, teaching their recipes to grandchildren who live far away. Michael remained silent for a few seconds, processing the idea. It's interesting, but how do you prove there's demand for this? Emily, who had been quiet until then, decided to intervene. Michael, do you know how to cook? Not much. I live on takeout and frozen food. Would you like to learn? I would, but I don't have time to watch long videos on YouTube or read complicated recipes. And what if you could learn simple recipes explained by real people, which you could make with basic ingredients you already have at home? Michael began to understand where they were heading. That would be useful, yes. Helena, who had been listening to the conversation in silence, decided to speak up. Mr. Michael, can I ask you a personal question? Do you remember any special dish your mother or grandmother used to make? The developer smiled nostalgically. My grandmother made an eggplant lasagna that was incredible. I could never reproduce the flavor. And would you like to learn her original recipe? I would love to, but she's already not with us anymore, and she never wrote down the recipe. Exactly, David interjected. That's precisely what we want to solve. Preserve these recipes before they are lost forever. Michael looked thoughtful. It would have to be very well executed to stand out from the competition. That's why I need you, Michael. Your technical expertise combined with Helena's culinary wisdom and Emily's marketing vision. And what would the business model be? Freemium. A free basic version with limited recipes, a premium version with unlimited access, the ability to record your own recipes, and advanced features like meal planning and smart shopping lists. Michael nodded slowly. David, it's an interesting idea, but developing this with quality will take months. Months we don't have. What if we start with an MVP, a minimum viable product, just with the essential features? Even so. Michael, David interrupted him. What's the alternative? Close the company and each go our separate ways, or bet on something that might work? The developer looked around the room, seeing the expectation on everyone's faces. How long do you think we would need to have a functional prototype? With you focused on development and me taking care of the interface, 2 weeks to have something basic up and running. And the content, the recipes? David looked at Helena. Helena will be our first content creator. She knows hundreds of traditional recipes and has a unique way of explaining each one. Michael remained silent for long minutes, clearly weighing the pros and cons. The tension in the room was palpable. David knew that without his partner's support, it would be impossible to develop the app in time. "David, there's something you're not considering," Michael finally spoke. "For a recipe app to succeed, it needs a lot of content from the start. We can't rely solely on Helena's recipes." "You're right," David admitted. "But what if we started creating a community? Invited other people to share their family recipes? How? We don't have a budget for marketing." Emily, who had worked in advertising agencies before getting married, had an idea. "What if we held an event? Something small, local, to test the concept and generate the first content." "What kind of event?" David asked. "A family recipe festival. We invite people to bring a special dish from their family and tell the story behind it. We record everything for the app." Helena became excited about the idea. "It could be held right here in the neighborhood. I know several neighbors who have incredible recipes." Michael still seemed skeptical. "And where would we find participants?" "Social media," Emily replied. "A simple campaign asking people to share stories of family recipes. I bet we would get a surprising response." Michael murmured, beginning to see the possibilities. "If we could get about 20 good recipes right at the start." "Exactly. And each person participating in the event would become a natural evangelist for the app." David felt a wave of hope. "Michael, are you in?" The developer sighed deeply. "David, I'll be honest with you. I think this is our only real chance to save the company. If it doesn't work out, at least we tried something different." "So you're on board?" "I'm in, but with a few conditions." "What conditions?" "First, a tight but realistic schedule. 2 weeks for the MVP, plus 2 for refinements before launch. Second, total focus from the team. No distractions with other ideas. Third, clear success metrics. If we don't meet the goals in 2 months, we shut it down." David extended his hand to Michael. "Deal." They shook hands, and for the first time in months, David felt that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. "When do we start?" Michael asked. "Now," David replied. "Helena, how about we record our first recipe this afternoon?" The cook smiled. "I already know which one I'll teach first." "Which one?" "Homemade sugar bread. It's simple, everyone loves it. And it has a beautiful story about how my great-grandmother created the recipe during the drought of 1932. Emily hugged David. "I'm proud of you. This time I feel like we are on the right track." David looked around the room, seeing Helena mentally organizing her recipe, Michael already scribbling technical ideas on a piece of paper, and Emily planning marketing strategies. For the first time in a long time, he felt he was not facing the challenges alone. "Guys," he said, "I think we just started something very special." The phone rang again. It was a number David didn't recognize. "Hello? David Thompson. This is James Williams from Itaú Bank. I need to speak with you urgently about the overdue payments on your business account." David looked at the others, who were waiting anxiously. "Can I call back in an hour? I'm in an important meeting." "Mr. Montenegro, we're talking about a deadline that's due tomorrow." David hung up the phone and took a deep breath. Even with all the renewed hope, the financial reality was still a huge and urgent problem. Helena noticed David's worried expression after the phone call and decided it was time to be more direct. "Mr. David, over all these years working for your family, I managed to save some money. If you need—" "Helena, I can't accept that." "Listen, Mr. David, you all treated me like family for 15 years. When my sister got sick, you paid for the hospital. When my grandson needed surgery, Mrs. Emily didn't hesitate to help. Now it's my turn to give back." Emily was moved. "Helena, you don't have to. It's not a matter of needing to, Mrs. Emily. It's a matter of wanting to. Besides, I believe in this app idea. I think it can work." Michael, still processing the cook's generosity, shook his head in admiration. "David, you have an incredible team around you." "No," David corrected. "I have an incredible family around me." Helena wiped a discreet tear. Then it's decided. We'll record the first recipe today, and tomorrow Mr. David will call the bank to explain that he has a promising new project. Helena, if this app works out, you'll be our official partner. I just want to help people connect with real food, Mr. David. The rest is a consequence. That afternoon, they transformed the kitchen of the house into a small recording studio. Michael adjusted the lighting using lamps from the house. David positioned 2 cameras, one on his phone and the other on an old digital camera, and Emily prepared a basic script for Helena to follow. "Ready, Helena?" David asked. "Ready?" Helena washed her hands, put on her favorite apron, and looked directly at the camera with a warm smile. "Hi, my dears. I'm Helena, and today I'm going to teach you how to make the sugar bread that my great-grandmother created during the drought of 1932 in the interior of Greenfield." The naturalness with which Helena spoke surprised everyone. It was as if she were a born presenter. "My great-grandmother, Mrs. Francisca, only had sugar, flour, and eggs at home during that difficult time, but she had something more precious, the creativity of a mother who wouldn't let her children go without a little sweet treat." Helena began to separate the ingredients, explaining each one with care. "Look, the flour has to be sifted twice. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. My great-grandmother used to say that sifting is like straining worries. It only leaves what's good." David exchanged amazed glances with Michael. This wasn't just a recipe being taught, it was a story being told, a tradition being preserved. "Now the secret is to beat the egg whites until they are very firm. My great-grandmother didn't have an electric mixer. She used a fork and a lot of patience. She said it was time to talk to God and organize her thoughts." Helena continued preparing the dough, interspersing culinary techniques with family stories. She talked about how the recipe was passed down to her grandmother, then to her mother, and finally to her. "And now," Helena said, looking directly at the camera, "I'm passing it on to you. Because family recipes are meant to be shared, not kept." When Helena finished the recording, everyone in the kitchen was emotional. "Helena," Emily said, "that was amazing. You have a natural talent for this." "Was it?" Helena asked, insecure. "It was perfect," Michael confirmed. "Now I understand why David believes so much in this idea." David hugged Helena. "Thank you. Not just for the recipe, but for believing in us." "Mr. David, can I suggest something?" "Of course. How about inviting Mrs. Margaret, my neighbor? She makes a corn cake that is wonderful and loves to tell stories." "Perfect idea. How many people like Mrs. Margaret do you know?" Helena thought for a moment. "About 10 at least, each with unique recipes." Michael was doing mental calculations. "If we can get 10 people like Helena to record 5 recipes each, we'd have 50 authentic recipes right at launch." David completed. In the following days, the Montenegro house transformed into a true production center. Helena contacted her friends and neighbors, explaining the project and inviting them to participate. The response was surprising. Everyone showed enthusiasm for the idea of preserving their family recipes. Michael worked tirelessly on developing the app, creating a simple and intuitive interface. "David, I'm thinking of adding a feature where people can leave comments on the recipes, sharing how they turned out when they made them at home." "Excellent idea. That would create a community around each recipe." Emily, in turn, developed the marketing strategy. "I've been researching, and there really is a gap in the market for apps that focus on family traditions. Most competitors treat cooking as something technical without the emotional aspect." "What would our specific differential be?" David asked. "Authenticity, history, and simplicity. Each recipe has a real person behind it, a real family, a real story." On the 3rd day of development, they received an unexpected visit. It was Antonia, Helena's neighbor, a 70-year-old small and energetic lady carrying a bag of ingredients. "Helena told me about your project. I brought everything to make my corn cake." David was surprised. "Mrs. Margaret, how kind of you, but you didn't have to go through all that trouble." "Trouble? Not at all. I'm eager to record my recipe. Helena said it would help people around the world get to know traditional Brazilian dishes." Emily set up the recording setup in the kitchen again, and Antonia proved to be even more natural than Helena in front of the cameras. Hello, darlings. I'm Antonia, and this corn cake was created by my mother when she was only 17 and needed to impress my father's family. The story that Antonia told while preparing the cake was fascinating. She spoke about how her mother, a young black woman from the interior of Westfield, had to prove her culinary worth to be accepted into a traditional Italian family. She took the basic corn cake recipe and added Westfield cheese, which the Italians loved, and fine cornmeal, which she learned from her own mother. It was a fusion of cultures that resulted in the tastiest cake in the region. Michael, who was watching the recording, whispered to David, "This is pure gold. History, culture, social integration. It's so much more than a recipe." When Antonia finished, David had an idea. "Mrs. Margaret, do you know other people with interesting stories behind their recipes?" "I know several. There's Mrs. Rosa, who created a different Beijinho recipe during the Second World War when sugar was rationed. There's Mr. Jack, who makes a coccinha filled with homemade catupiry that he inherited from his Portuguese father. Do you think they'd be willing to participate?" "I'm sure they would. Everyone loves to tell the story of their recipes. It's just that rarely anyone is interested in listening." Emily had an insight. "David, what if we created categories in the app based on the stories? War recipes, cultural fusions, creations of necessity." Brilliant. That would make the search more interesting and educational. Helena, who was cleaning the kitchen after the recording, commented, "You know you're creating something very important. Right, it's not just an app, it's an archive of Brazilian culture." David stopped what he was doing and looked at Helena. "You're right. This is bigger than we imagined." "How so?" Michael asked. "We're preserving the oral history of Brazilian cuisine. 50 years from now, when these people are no longer here, their recipes and stories will still be alive in the app." The dimension of the project began to become clear to everyone. It wasn't just a business, it was a cultural heritage being built. By the end of the first week of development, they had already recorded 15 recipes with 7 different people. Each recording brought not only a recipe, but a window into the personal and cultural history of Brazil. David was reviewing the recorded material when his phone rang. It was a known number, Rodrigo Almeida, a former client of Montenegro Tech who had become a successful angel investor. "David, I heard from the newspapers that Montenegro Tech is going through difficulties. Is everything okay?" David hesitated before responding. Rodrigo was an influential person in the tech market, and his opinion could make a difference. "Hi, Rodrigo. Yes, we've had some setbacks with Mind AI, but we're working on something new. Can I know what it is?" "An app for family recipes. It focuses on preserving culinary traditions and the stories behind the dishes." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Interesting. Do you have a prototype?" "We're still developing it, but we already have a lot of content recorded." "David, can I make a suggestion? How about presenting the project to my group of investors? We're always looking for ideas that have a social impact beyond financial return." David felt his heart race. "Rodrigo, that would be incredible. When?" "We have a meeting next Thursday. There are 7 investors who specialize in social tech startups. Would you have 20 minutes to present?" "I accept." "Great. But David, they are quite demanding. They're going to want to see numbers, projections, and a well-structured business model." After hanging up, David rushed to tell Emily, Michael, and Helena the news. "Guys, we have an incredible opportunity, but we also have a big challenge." "What opportunity?" Emily asked. "To present the project to a group of investors next Thursday." "Can't, what's the challenge?" Michael wanted to know. "We only have 1 week to have a functional prototype and a presentation that convinces them to invest." Helena, who was preparing dinner, commented, "A week is little time." "Yes," David agreed, "but it's our chance to get the investment we need to develop the app properly." Michael started calculating. "To have something presentable in a week, we're going to need to work almost non-stop." "I'm in," Emily said. "I'll handle the business presentation and the financial projections." "And I'll speed up the development," Michael added. "I'll focus only on the essential features." Helena dried her hands on the apron. "And I'll organize more recordings. How many recipes do you think we need to impress the investors?" David thought for a moment. "About 25, with good regional variety and interesting stories. I can manage that. I'll call my cousins from the countryside. They know recipes that even I don't know. That night, they organized a detailed schedule. Michael would work 16 hours a day on development. Emily would research the market and compile the business presentation. Helena would coordinate the recipe recordings. David would split his time between supporting technical development and rehearsing the presentation. "Are you sure we'll make it?" Emily asked. "We have no choice," David replied. "It's now or never." In the next 3 days, the house turned into a center of frenetic activity. Helena received a different person every few hours to record recipes. Neighbors from the neighborhood and relatives came from the countryside especially to participate in the project. One of the most emotional recordings was with Laura Green, Helena's cousin, who came from Ouro Preto bringing the recipe for colonial sugar bread that her family had preserved for generations. "This recipe arrived in Brazil with my Portuguese ancestors in 1750, she explained to the camera. "Each generation made small adjustments, adding local ingredients until it reached the version we make today." Michael even focused on development, occasionally stopped to watch the recordings. "David, the content we're creating is extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it in the market." While Michael typed codes furiously on his laptop, Emily was immersed in spreadsheets and market research in the office. She discovered surprising data about Brazilians' behavior regarding cooking. "David, come see this," she shouted from the office. David rushed up, still with flour on his hands after helping Helena organize ingredients for another recording. "What is it?" "Look at these numbers. 78% of Brazilians between 25 and 40 years old would like to cook more at home, but they don't know basic recipes. 45% say they lost important family recipes when relatives passed away." David whistled, impressed. "That confirms exactly what we thought. And there's more. The Brazilian culinary app market generates 120 million reais a year, but none of the leaders focus on family traditions. These numbers are perfect for the presentation. I've already organized everything into graphs. Now I'm working on the financial projections. If we can capture 5% of the market in 2 years, how much would that be? 6 million reais in annual revenue." David hugged his wife. "Emily, you're amazing. It's not over yet. I've also researched the monetization model. Besides the premium version, we can have partnerships with supermarkets for shopping direction, and even with brands of traditional ingredients." "How would that work?" "Imagine, the user chooses a grandmother's feijoada recipe. The app generates a shopping list automatically and offers the option to buy online with a discount at a partner supermarket." "Brilliant. And the brands?" "We could have a traditional ingredient seal for brands that maintain artisanal production methods. It's a way to connect culinary tradition with quality products." At that moment, Helena shouted from the kitchen, "Mr. David, Ms. Evelyn has arrived." Esperança was an 83-year-old lady who came from Maceió specifically to record the recipe for sururu that her great-grandmother prepared for fishermen in the 19th century. "Sorry for the delay," she said upon entering the kitchen. "I had to bring the fresh sururu from the fish market." David was astonished by the dedication of the lady. "Ms. Evelyn, you didn't need to go through so much trouble." "Trouble? Not at all, my child." When Helena explained to me that you want to preserve traditional recipes, I said, "This sururu recipe cannot be lost." The recording with Esperança was one of the richest in historical details. She shared how her great-grandmother, a freed black woman, supported 5 children by selling sururu on the beach to fishermen in Riverdale. It was a recipe that she invented by mixing African spices she knew with ingredients she found here in Brazil. The secret is in the coconut milk that she extracted on the spot and in the peppers she grew in the backyard. Michael, who was taking a break from development to watch, was fascinated. "Ms. Evelyn, you know this recipe represents an important part of Afro-Brazilian history." "I do, my dear, that's why I came here. I want people to know that our ancestors didn't just suffer, they created, invented, and left beautiful legacies." When the recording finished, David felt they had something much bigger than just a recipe app. They had a living archive of Brazil's cultural diversity. Guys, he told the team, we are documenting the soul of Brazil through food. Helena, emotional, added, and this will help people reconnect with their roots. The night before the presentation to investors, they did a final review of everything. Michael managed to create a functional prototype with 28 recipes, an ingredient search system, and detailed profiles of the cooks. Emily finalized a 15-slide presentation with market data, business model, and financial projections. David rehearsed his speech until he memorized every word. "Do you think we'll make it?" Helena asked, serving coffee to everyone. "We will," David replied confidently, "because we're not just selling an app, we're offering a bridge between generations." The morning of the presentation dawned sunny, a good omen according to Helena. David wore his best suit, Emily organized all the supporting materials, and Michael made the final adjustments to the prototype to ensure it worked perfectly during the demonstration. "Nervous?" Emily asked while David adjusted his tie for the third time. "A little, but also excited. I feel we are on the right track." Helena appeared in the room carrying a thermal bag. "What's this, Helena?" David asked. "Sugar breads I made yesterday. I thought the investors might like to taste a little of the recipe we recorded." David smiled. "Helena, you're a genius. Nothing better than letting them experience firsthand what we're proposing." The meeting would be in the conference room of a hotel in downtown Springfield. David, Emily, and Michael arrived 15 minutes early to set up the equipment. Rodrigo welcomed them and introduced the 7 investors, 3 men and 4 women, all between 40 and 60 years old, dressed in business attire with professional expressions. "David, you have 20 minutes for your presentation, then we'll open the floor for questions," Rodrigo explained. "Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity." David took a deep breath and began, "Good morning. Do you know what the last homemade dish you ate was?" The question caught the investors by surprise. Some smiled while others thought for a moment. "Now imagine if I tell you that 78% of Brazilians would like to cook more at home, but don't know how, and that 45% have lost important family recipes when relatives passed away." David showed the first slides with the market data Emily had researched. "What we are proposing is not just another recipe app. It's a platform that preserves the culinary memory of Brazilian families." He then began to explain the concept, showing how each recipe came with the story of the person who created it. To demonstrate in practice, David said, picking up Helena's bag, "We brought something special." He distributed small pieces of sugar bread to the investors. This bread was made following a recipe created in 1932 during the drought in Greenfield. The recipe was recorded by Helena, our first content creator, telling the whole story of her great-grandmother who created it. The investors tasted the bread, while David displayed on the screen the video of Helena teaching the recipe. The contrast between tasting the physical bread and seeing the story behind it created a visible emotional impact in the room. "Our value proposition is unique in the market," David continued. "We offer not just ingredients and preparation methods, we offer emotional connection, cultural preservation, and authenticity." Michael took over the presentation to demonstrate the prototype. He showed how a user could photograph ingredients they have at home and receive suggestions for traditional recipes, how each recipe came with a video of the person teaching, and how the system allowed the creation of digital family recipe books. "Technology is at the service of tradition," Michael explained. "We use artificial intelligence to connect ingredients with recipes, but the heart of the app is the human stories." Emily presented the business numbers: freemium model, multiple revenue sources, partnerships with supermarkets and traditional brands. "We estimate to capture 5% of the Brazilian market in the first 2 years, generating 6 million in annual revenue." When David concluded the presentation, the room fell silent for a few seconds. Then, one of the investors, Sarah Johnson, raised her hand. "David, the concept is interesting, but how do you plan to scale the content? You can't rely solely on people like Helena." "Excellent question. Our strategy is to create a network of regional ambassadors, people like Helena in different states who know the local cuisine and can recruit other cooks from the region." Another investor, James, asked, "And the competition? How do you differentiate from already established apps?" James, we tested several competing apps. They all focus on modern recipes, sophisticated ingredients, and visual presentation. None focus on preserving family traditions or offer the emotional connection we propose. Sarah Johnson asked a second question. Do you have data on user retention? Michael replied, we don't have our own data yet, but research shows that apps with storytelling content have a retention rate 30% higher than purely functional apps. The Q&A session extended for 40 minutes, well beyond the initially planned 20. The investors questioned everything from technical details to growth projections, marketing strategies, and international expansion potential. One last question, said Robert Smith, an investor who had remained silent throughout the presentation. Have you thought about the social impact this project can have? David smiled. Robert Smith, we believe we are creating more than a business. We are preserving intangible cultural heritage. 50 years from now, when many of these people are no longer here, their recipes and stories will still be alive. And there's the issue of inclusion, Emily added. We are giving a voice to people who traditionally have no space in mainstream culinary media. Housewives, humble cooks, people from the countryside. Sarah Johnson seemed touched by the comment. That's true. Most famous chefs on TV are white men from upper middle-class backgrounds. You are democratizing this. After the presentation, the investors met separately for 20 minutes to discuss. David, Emily, and Michael waited in an adjacent room, tense and hopeful. I think it went well, Michael commented. The questions were challenging, but we managed to answer everything confidently, Emily agreed. Now we wait, David said, trying to control his anxiety. When they were called back, Rodrigo was smiling. David, after an intense discussion, we reached a decision. David held Emily's hand, preparing for any response. We are willing to invest 500,000 Rs in exchange for 20% of the company. The relief and joy were instantaneous. David had to control himself from shouting with happiness. Rodrigo, I accept. Thank you for your trust. But we have some conditions, Sarah Johnson interjected. First, we want monthly follow-ups on development. Second, you have 4 months to launch the full version of the app. Third, we need to see 1,000 active users in the first 2 months after launch. Those are fair conditions, David replied. I accept all. Great. Our legal team will contact you tomorrow to finalize the contractual details. When they left the hotel, David hugged Emily and Michael right in the street. We did it. We really did it. Now the real work begins, Michael reminded. But he was smiling. Let's go home and tell the news to Helena, Emily suggested. She's going to be so happy. On the way back, David called Helena. Helena, we got the investment. Mr. David, how wonderful. I knew you would succeed. Helena, you want to know something? You are officially our partner now. What do you mean? With the investment, we will formalize our partnership. You will have an official stake in the company. Helena was silent for a few seconds, clearly emotional. Mr. David, in 40 years of work, I never imagined I would one day be a partner in a company. You deserve it, Helena. This idea exists because of you. When they got home, they found Helena waiting with a still warm chocolate cake and a bottle of champagne she had been saving for years. How did you know we had reason to celebrate? Emily asked. I knew, Helena simply replied. I felt in my heart that it would work out. That night, the 4 of them sat in the living room and planned the upcoming months. With the investment secured, they could hire more developers, set up a proper recording studio, and create a robust marketing strategy. David, Michael said, with 500,000 Rs, we can make a truly exceptional app. And we can travel across Brazil recording recipes in different regions, Helena suggested. I want to show the culinary diversity that exists in this country. Great idea, Emily agreed. Each region can have its own section in the app. David looked around the room, seeing the 3 people who had believed in him when everything seemed lost. You know we are a family, right? We've always been, Helena replied. Now we are a family that will change the way Brazil connects with its own culture. The end.